Hey guys, today we're going to walk through 5 security features and settings in Entra that you may not have known existed. The best part about these features to me is that they're included in base plans like Business Premium. So let's go ahead and dive in, starting in the Entra Admin Center. Okay guys, so as we dive in here, I'm in the Entra Admin Center and I'm under the authentication methods policies. For this first setting that I'm going to show you guys today, this is the password protection tab. And specifically, I'm looking at the custom banned password list. This is something you may be thinking, are we really talking about password security here in 2025? Yes, it's still very much a weakness. A lot of users still choose inherently weak passwords. And we've done things over time here, like saying that we're not going to make them reset their password periodically because it actually enforces them to choose weaker passwords. As an example, we may have password managers in place. Sometimes they're used, sometimes they're not. But we have passwords that are, very complex that are generated there, stored there, so that a user does not have to remember that password. I always remember this though because I listened to a talk from Overlook, which is a ethical hacker from Black Hills InfoSec, and he was basically showcasing, all these studies and use cases where he's gone in and he was able to use these inherently weak passwords as part of a password spray attack or something like that, and actually, get access into the user account. Now we'll get into the MFA consideration here if they have that as an example of this, but previously he was able to use passwords like this, that users would choose because they could just keep rolling the date and the season as an example here, and so these were easily guessable. If I'm on a user record though, and I try to go ahead and change this password to that summer 2025 as an example of this, I'm going to go ahead and get a message that says, choose a password that's harder to guess. So definitely, a lot of enhancements there. And Microsoft does have their own globally banned password lists. They don't publish, obviously, just for the sake of, bad actors getting a hold of that and being able to narrow down what they could use as part of a password spray attack or something like that. But it's definitely something where, there's still inherent weak use. And in a lot of cases, users are going to gravitate towards something about products in the company, company locations, their job, things like that, that might be listed as part of, everything that they're doing within there. So a good example of this is a company hypothetically called Technova, and this user going in and saying Technova HQ 2025 and going to submit this. That actually was successful and changed their password. So those common types of, chains of events, like the locations, the, commonly used terms within the organization, they might be cultural in nature, something that you could use various documents to kind of source and funnel through. Some type of AI model, honestly, is helpful, like GPT or Copilot, as an example, to derive a password list here that's easily guessable, that you could start to pump in based off of that, because the attackers have these same tools. And they can peel things off of, the company's website. They can start to do some social engineering and things like that. And they can derive quickly now their own list of passwords they can use as part of a password spray attack. So it's good to do that and pump these through here. To the MFA questions that probably are popping up in your mind about this. Well, if they have the user password, could they still breach their account without, knowing MFA? Yes, just generally because they can still use, other continuations of breaking into the account, such as MFA fatigue, as well as just social engineering to get that user to go ahead and give them the number. They're using number matching on Authenticator as well. The next setting is a pretty fascinating one to me. It's a setting that not a lot of people go in and turn off. But if you go under the user section here and go under user settings, there's a setting here that says restrict access to the Microsoft Admin Center. And by default, this is set to no. If you look at the infographic here, it's going to say this is not a security measure. And basically, if you follow Microsoft's documentation, they want you to create a conditional access policy for this, in addition to selecting this as yes, if you're going to turn that on, to relate to, not letting users access both the UI as well as programmatically over PowerShell, as an example. So definitely the further recommendation to go in and take a look at it from that lens. But if I don't have this setting on and it's turned to off as an example here, users have quite a significant ability to take a look into the organization. If I go back to Alan here in this test tenant that I have stood up, Alan doesn't have any type of admin role or anything like that. He's just a regular member in the organization, with the basic mailbox as an example of that. And if I go ahead actually and sign in now with that weak password that I just used, I'm going to go ahead and type this in. So this is Alan's view actually of the Entra Admin Center if he just hits this URL. So when you're thinking about this, you can think about if Alan did get breached for any reason, the attacker got access to his account through token theft or phishing or however that might exist for them, as far as just the initial access, they can then go to the Entra Admin Center and do one of two things really. They can first find out a lot about the organization. So they can go to the users tab, they can see all the users, they can see, other metadata about them, even their job title and things like that. They can go into roles and admins as an example, and they can see all of the various administrator roles. I could go and say, well, who's the global administrators in this tenant? And I can click into that and I can see the active assignments for other people I might want to try to target. As part of continuing my campaign, that would give me full access into this tenant. And if we go back there, again, just to reiterate, this is Alan, who I'm signed in with here. He doesn't have any active assignments. So I'm able to see all of this by default and can do a lot of reconnaissance and understand who I need to target within the organization. So there's a lot of sensitive data that they would have access to immediately. So be sure to go into the user settings here and take a look at the setting. I'll link this article here, which talks about additionally the conditional access policy you can pair with this. The next setting I want to talk about here is under conditional access, and it's specifically under the policy section here, where when I go to create a new policy, I can go ahead and require a managed device. I've showed this in other videos, but I think this is widely unknown here as far as the settings goes. For looking for a managed device in the specific use case here would be around, hey, we are not a hybrid organization, so we don't want to have this whole devices must be hybrid joined as a consideration here. And we don't want to fully go into Intune just yet, or have device compliance policies, because that's a lot more organizational overhead. I just want to make sure our users are accessing data on corporate-owned devices, as an example. So within here, as the example I'm going to be giving, you can go ahead and scope this to certain users or all users. You want to pilot this obviously with a few test users, but in production, you would move to all users, and then you would exclude break glass account, emergency access account, and then likely all of your guests and external users as you would target them differently. And because this would also block you if you're an MSP through your GDAP access here, where it would say, hey, you need a managed device for service providers as well. So this is something that you want to configure on the exclusions, likely have that set up here to target those users differently. For the target resources, you would say all resources in this particular case. Don't need to configure anything for network, but under this filter for devices, this is where you can actually come in and configure this. I'm going to say that we're going to exclude these devices because we're going to create a block policy. But within here, you can use this attribute, and certainly you could get creative with the various attributes for different types of policies within here, but you want to say the trust type equals, and then you would do Microsoft Entra joined as an example. And you could certainly add another secondary expression if you wanted to support an OR statement for looking at Microsoft Entra registered as well too. And so the benefit of this policy is great in the sense that you are preventing, certain types of attack flows like adversary in the middle. Token theft is a great example. I showed that on a previous blog and video, but basically this will block that attack from occurring if a user clicks on the malicious link and is taken to that fake Microsoft web page. Same is true if you were to do the hybrid or compliant device as an example. And additionally, it can also help prevent whenever an attacker maybe steals user's identity in some other form or fashion and is trying to sign in on a different device. At a later point in time, they would get blocked because that device likely, is not going to be joined or registered as an example of this. So then the rest of your grant controls here would look to block. So that's a great policy, but specifically these settings here, I think, are not widely known for ways in which you can get creative on, blocking the actual or filtering out for managed devices here. when you're cloud-based. The next setting I want to show you guys is under Enterprise Apps. This is one that I think a lot of people have awareness around. And so you might be saying, oh yeah, we always turn this off, or we don't allow user consent to applications, but by default, this is turned on so that users can consent to apps and they can also register apps, which I'll get to here in a minute as well. But effectively, while a lot of people say that we're aware of this setting, in CloudCapsule as an example, all of our ecosystem, over 50% of the tenants that are onboarded have this setting, what I would consider to be misconfigured, where this is wide open. And the same is true under the user settings here, where you would say, hey, users can register applications is set to yes by default. And so where this comes into play is really around this concept of, again, a post-breach event where the user's been compromised and the attacker goes in, they try to set up persistence by registering an application because it has its own set of permissions and own identity to go ahead and send email on behalf of users, impersonate them, exfiltrate data locally, things like that. But they can also grant consent to pre-existing applications as well too that are also used maliciously in nature. Great examples of this is Perfect Data, Cloud Sponge, etc., where we see legitimate use of an application being used nefariously. And so actually, around 10% of all tenants that we see in the CloudCapsule ecosystem also have one of those traderware apps within the tenant pre-existing. It could have been from years ago that was stood up, but it's still a major concern, which is why you need to take a look at these settings. So if I'm back in Alan's view here, I can go under the applications section here. So again, here's where you would want to go into the user settings and make sure this is turned off. And in the enterprise application section under consent and permissions, making sure this is set to do not allow consent for users. And you can turn in the admin consent request here to get this sent to an approved work stream that would review that and approve it if necessary. Last setting I'm going to show you is more of a broader feature set called Global Secure Access. A lot of people don't know that with just Entra P1, you get access into the Microsoft traffic profile, as well as being able to leverage this with conditional access policies. If you're not familiar with Global Secure Access, I'm not going to be doing obviously a deep dive in this video, but think of this as a long-term replacement for VPNs. And certainly you don't get the full-fledged feature set here just in P1 that requires an add-on license for the Entra suite, but it does allow you to have secure traffic for Microsoft services. So thinking of channeling that for users accessing, Outlook or the SharePoint documents that they might have as well. And by tying it in with conditional access, you could also help prevent different types of attacks like token theft. I've also showed that as well here too, which effectively is saying that, we're pushing out a client to end user devices. And as long as they have that client active, it's going to funnel that traffic into the secure tunnel. And in this case, we're just looking at Microsoft services as it relates to that. So what I love about this service also is it's easy to deploy, and it does allow you to be a lot more flexible with both users' locations as well as their endpoints that they're using or devices. Now, there's certainly an asterisk to that when it relates to security of those devices, but it does give you more flexibility in how users can access their files and so forth securely. And you can then look at extending that further where you might have had legacy VPN solutions and so forth. Hey guys, that's everything I had for you today. Definitely comment below with any questions you had about the features or settings that I showed, as well as any features or settings that you leveraged today that improve your security posture. I'll see you guys next week.